My name is Margaret, though most people call me Maggie. I'm 59 years old, and I thought I knew my son. I really did. For 34 years, I raised him, loved him, sacrificed for him. I never imagined he'd be the kind of man who could look his own mother in the eye, smile, and then lock her in a basement like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. But that's exactly what happened. And what I did next, well, let's just say he never saw it coming. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my own child, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe, because this story is about to take a turn that'll make you rethink everything you know about family loyalty. I live in Tacoma, Washington, in a beautiful 4-bedroom craftsman house that my late husband Frank and I bought back in 1989. Frank passed away 4 years ago from a sudden heart attack. He was only 61. We'd planned to grow old together in this house, maybe travel a bit once I retired from my nursing career. But life had other plans. After Frank died, I threw myself into work for another 2 years before finally retiring at 57. The house felt too big without him, but I couldn't bring myself to leave. Every corner held a memory. The kitchen where Frank taught our son, Derek, to make his famous spaghetti sauce. The living room where we watched Derek graduate high school, then college. The backyard where Frank built a treehouse that's still standing, weathered but solid. The house is worth quite a bit now. Tacoma's real estate market has exploded in recent years. When Frank and I bought it for $168,000, we thought we were splurging. Now it's valued at around $640,000. We paid off the mortgage 8 years ago, one of Frank's proudest moments. He wanted to make sure I'd always have security, always have a roof over my head, no matter what happened. That's the kind of man he was. Thoughtful, protective. He would have done anything for his family. My son Derek is 34 now. He works as an operations manager at a distribution center, making a decent salary of about $78,000 a year. He married Heather 3 years ago. Heather is 31, works in human resources at a tech company, pulling in around $65,000. On paper, they're doing fine. They rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Seattle, about 40 minutes from my place. But Derek has always had expensive tastes. Even as a kid, he wanted the brand name sneakers, the latest gaming systems. Frank and I indulged him maybe too much. We wanted to give him what we never had growing up. Heather comes from money. Her parents own a chain of dental practices across Washington state. She grew up in a 5,000-square-foot house in Bellevue, went to private schools, spent summers in Europe. I think that's part of why Derek feels pressure to keep up with her lifestyle. They take trips to Hawaii Cabo wine country. They eat at fancy restaurants and post everything on social media. I've wondered more than once how they afford it on their salaries. Derek's hinted at credit card debt, but he brushes it off when I ask. Our relationship has been strained since Frank died. Derek used to visit every Sunday for dinner. After the funeral, the visits became monthly, then sporadic. Heather always had an excuse. Too much work, too tired plans with her family. I tried not to take it personally. Young couples need their space. But I missed my son. I missed feeling like I mattered to him. 6 weeks ago, Derek called me. It was a Tuesday evening, and I was surprised to hear from him midweek. His voice was cheerful, almost too cheerful. He said he and Heather had been talking, and they wanted to spend more time with me. They'd been feeling guilty about not visiting enough. My heart lifted. Maybe we were finally getting back to how things used to be. He asked if they could come over that weekend. I said yes immediately. I baked Derek's favorite lemon bars and cleaned the house top to bottom. When Saturday arrived, I was ready, hopeful that we could rebuild our relationship. I had no idea what was really coming. They arrived around 2 in the afternoon. Derek hugged me at the door. A real hug, not the quick side squeeze he'd been giving me lately. Heather smiled and complimented my blouse. We settled in the living room with coffee and lemon bars. The conversation flowed easily at first. Derek asked about my book club, my garden, my friends. Heather chimed in with questions about my volunteer work at the community center. It felt good. It felt like family again. Then Derek's tone shifted. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his expression turning serious. He said they had something important to discuss with me. My stomach tightened. I thought maybe they were pregnant or moving away. Instead, Derek said they were planning a big vacation. 3 weeks in Europe. Italy, France, Switzerland. They'd been saving for 2 years, and this was finally happening. I was happy for them. I told them it sounded wonderful, that they deserved it. Then Heather said they were leaving in 10 days, and they had a favor to ask. She said their apartment building had been having break-ins. Just last month, a unit on their floor was burglarized. They didn't feel comfortable leaving their valuables there for 3 weeks. She asked if they could store some things at my house while they were gone. Of course, I said yes. I have plenty of space, especially in the basement. It's fully finished down there. Frank's old workshop area, a storage room, even a bathroom. Derek looked relieved. He said they'd bring everything over next weekend. Then he added something that should have been a red flag. He said they might need to stay at my house the night before their flight. Their lease had a clause about extended absences, and they didn't want any issues with their landlord. Could they crash here? I said, absolutely. I was just glad to help, glad to feel needed again. We spent the rest of the afternoon looking at their travel itinerary on Heather's tablet. Rome, Florence, Venice, the French Riviera, the Swiss Alps. It looked like a dream trip, the kind Frank and I always talked about, but never took. I felt a little wistful, but I was genuinely happy for them. The following Saturday, Derek and Heather showed up with a moving truck. Not a van, a full-sized moving truck. I stood in my driveway, confused. Derek jumped out laughing, saying they'd borrowed it from Heather's dad because they had more stuff than they thought. They started unloading boxes, suitcases, furniture even, a leather sofa, a dining table, lamps. I asked why they were bringing furniture. Heather explained that their apartment was being fumigated while they were gone. Something about a bedbug scare in the building. The landlord required all furniture to be removed during treatment. She apologized for not mentioning it earlier, said it was a last-minute thing. It seemed odd, but I didn't want to make a fuss. We carried everything down to the basement. It took 3 hours. By the end, my basement looked like a storage unit. Their belongings filled almost every available space. That evening, Derek ordered pizza, and we ate in the kitchen. Heather was on her phone most of dinner texting someone. She said it was her mom confirming plans for when they got back. Derek talked about their flight leaving from SeaTac at 6 in the morning. They'd need to leave my house by 3:30. He asked if I minded if they turned in early. I said no problem, I'd make up the guest room. Around 9 o'clock, Derek said he needed to move a few more things around in the basement to make sure everything fit properly. He asked me to come down and show him which areas I didn't mind them using. I grabbed a sweater and followed him downstairs. The basement felt cramped now with all their stuff. Derek was rearranging boxes near the back wall. He asked me to check if the bathroom down there still worked okay. They might need it in the morning before they left. I walked into the basement bathroom. It's small, but functional toilet sink shower stall. I turned on the faucet to check the water pressure. That's when I heard it, the door closing behind me. Then a click. I spun around and grabbed the handle. Locked. I knocked on the door. Derek. This door doesn't have a lock from the outside. What's going on? Derek's voice came through the wood, calm, almost apologetic. He said I needed to stay in there for a little while, just until they left in the morning. I thought he was joking. I told him to stop playing around and let me out. He said he couldn't do that. He said they needed me out of the way. My heart started racing. I asked what he meant. He said I'd understand eventually, that this was for the best, and that he'd left some supplies for me. Then I heard his footsteps going up the stairs. I pounded on the door. I yelled for Heather. I screamed Derek's name. Nothing. I heard the basement door at the top of the stairs close. Then silence. I stood there in shock, my mind refusing to process what just happened. My son, my only child, had just locked me in a bathroom in my own basement. This had to be some kind of misunderstanding, some kind of terrible joke. But the locked door was real, and the silence from upstairs was real too. I don't know how long I stood there before my shock turned to anger and then to fear. The bathroom is maybe 6 feet by 8 feet. There's a toilet, a pedestal sink, a shower with a plastic curtain, and one small window near the ceiling. The kind that tips open, but is too small for a person to fit through. The window was painted shut anyway. I'd noticed that years ago, but never bothered fixing it since we rarely used this bathroom. I looked around for the supplies Derek mentioned. On the toilet tank sat a gallon jug of water, a box of granola bars, and a roll of paper towels. Next to them was a note in Derek's handwriting. It said, "Mom, I'm sorry it had to be like this. We'll explain everything when we get back. There's food and water. You'll be fine. Don't do anything stupid. We love you. Don't do anything stupid." My son locked me in a basement bathroom and had the nerve to tell me not to do anything stupid. The absurdity of it made me want to laugh and cry at the same time. I tried the door handle again, yanking hard. It didn't budge. The door opened inward, so I couldn't get leverage to kick it open. I examined the hinges. They were on the outside. Of course they were. I sat on the closed toilet lid, trying to think. My phone. Where was my phone? I'd left it charging in the kitchen. Fantastic. I had no way to call for help. I looked at the window again. Even if I could open it, even if I could somehow squeeze through it, would put me in the window, well outside, which was covered with a metal grate. I'd seen Frank install that grate himself years ago to keep animals out. The hours crawled by. I heard footsteps above me periodically. The sound of the television. Normal household sounds like nothing was wrong. Like their mother wasn't locked in the basement. I tried yelling again, but I knew it was pointless. My house sits on a large lot. The nearest neighbors are 200 feet away on either side. No one would hear me. Around midnight, everything went quiet upstairs. They'd gone to bed, in my guest room, in my house, while I sat in a bathroom in my own basement. The rage I felt was unlike anything I'd experienced. This wasn't just disrespectful. This wasn't just cruel. This was imprisonment. This was my child treating me like I was an obstacle to be removed. But why? What could they possibly gain from locking me down here? The question gnawed at me through the night. I dozed fitfully, my back against the wall, too angry and uncomfortable to really sleep. At some point in the early morning hours, I heard movement upstairs again. Footsteps, the sound of the front door opening and closing, a car engine starting, then silence. They were gone, off to Europe, and I was still locked in this bathroom. I screamed until my throat was raw. I pounded on the door until my hands ached. Nothing changed. The door stayed locked. The house stayed silent. I was trapped, and no one knew I was here. I won't lie. Panic set in. What if I was stuck here for 3 weeks? What if something happened to them overseas, and no one came looking for me? What if I died in this bathroom because my son decided I was in his way? I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think clearly. There had to be a way out. There had to be. I examined every inch of that bathroom. The ceiling was drywall, but I had nothing to break through it with. The shower curtain rod was plastic, useless as a tool. The mirror above the sink was attached firmly to the wall. I looked at the plumbing under the sink. The pipes were PVC. I tried to unscrew the P-trap, thinking maybe I could flood the bathroom and force the door somehow. But the connections were too tight. My hands weren't strong enough. Then I remembered something. Years ago, Frank had installed a small vent in the bathroom ceiling for ventilation. It connected to the main HVAC system. I stood on the toilet and pushed at the vent cover. It popped off easily. Behind it was a rectangular opening, maybe 10 inches by 14 inches. Too small for me to fit through, but big enough for sound to carry. I started yelling through the vent. "Help! Someone help me! I'm trapped!" My voice echoed through the ductwork. I yelled until I was hoarse, then drank some water and yelled some more. Hours passed. My voice gave out. I sat back down, defeated. It was Monday morning when I heard it. A faint sound from somewhere in the house. A phone ringing. My landline. I'd almost forgotten I still had one. Frank insisted on keeping it for emergencies. I never used it, but I paid the bill every month out of habit. The ringing stopped, then started again. Someone was trying to reach me. I climbed back onto the toilet and yelled through the vent. "Please, I'm in the basement. I'm trapped. Help me." The phone kept ringing. Then it stopped. Silence. I slumped down, tears finally coming. I'd been so close. But then, a miracle. I heard the front door open. Someone was in my house. I screamed through the vent. "I'm downstairs, in the basement bathroom. Please, help me." Footsteps on the floor above, moving fast, coming toward the basement door. I heard it open. Someone coming down the stairs. A woman's voice called out, "Mrs. Palmer, are you down here?" It was Diane, my neighbor from 2 doors down. I yelled back, "I'm in the bathroom. I'm locked in." I heard her try the door. Then her voice shocked. "Oh my God. Hang on. I'm calling the police." "No," I said quickly. "Don't call the police. Just get me out. There's a key somewhere, or break the lock, please." Diane said she'd find something. I heard her searching. Then the sound of metal on metal. She was using something on the lock. It took maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like hours. Finally, I heard a click. The door swung open. I stumbled out my legs, stiff from sitting so long. Diane caught my arm. She's 63 lives alone since her husband died, and we've been friendly neighbors for years. She looked at me with horror and concern. "What happened? Who did this to you?" I didn't answer right away. I just stood there, breathing in the air of freedom, my mind already racing ahead to what I was going to do next. Diane helped me upstairs. My legs were shaky, my body sore from 2 days in that cramped bathroom. She made me sit in the kitchen while she got me water and food. Real food, not granola bars. She heated up some soup and watched me eat her face, still etched with worry and confusion. She told me she'd been calling since Saturday evening. She'd seen Derek's car in my driveway, but when I didn't answer, she figured I was busy with them. But when she called again Sunday and Monday morning, with no answer, she got concerned. She knew I always answered my phone. She has a spare key to my house that I'd given her years ago for emergencies. She'd debated using it, didn't want to intrude, but something told her to check on me. I owed her my life. I told her that. She waved it off, but I could see she was shaken. She asked again what happened. I gave her the short version. My son and his wife locked me in the basement bathroom before leaving for a 3-week vacation to Europe. Diane's mouth fell open. She said we needed to call the police immediately. I told her no, not yet. I needed to think. Diane argued with me. She said what Derek did was illegal, criminal even. False imprisonment. elder abuse. I could have died down there. I knew she was right, but I also knew that calling the police on my own son would destroy whatever relationship we had left. And despite everything, despite the rage burning in my chest, he was still my child. I needed to understand why first. I needed to figure out what they were really after. Diane reluctantly agreed to wait, but she insisted on staying with me. She said she wasn't leaving me alone in this house. I was grateful. I showered, changed clothes, and tried to make sense of what had happened. Then, I went down to the basement with Diane to look at all the stuff Derek and Heather had stored. We started opening boxes. The first few contained clothes books, kitchen items, normal stuff. But then, we opened a box that was mostly papers, documents. And that's when I started to understand. There were printouts of real estate listings. Not rentals, houses for sale, all in Tacoma, all in the $300,000 to $400,000 range. There were mortgage pre-approval letters addressed to Derek and Heather. There were notes in Heather's handwriting about down payments and closing costs. I found a folder with my house information, tax records that could only have come from the county assessor's website, a printout of my property deed, a comparative market analysis showing my house was worth between $620,000 and $660,000. There were calculations in the margins. If sold for $640,000 minus realtor fees, closing costs, that would net about $595,000, more than enough for a down payment on a new house. They were planning to sell my house. That's what this was about. Lock me away, go on vacation, and somehow sell my house while they were gone. But that didn't make sense. They couldn't sell my house without me. I owned it outright. My name was on the deed. Unless I found another document, a power of attorney form. It was filled out with my information, but not signed. There was a sticky note attached in Derek's handwriting. Get Mom to sign before we leave, or figure out Plan B. Lock basement, if needed, until we get back and convince her. My hands shook as I read it. Plan B was locking me in the basement. They'd planned this. This wasn't some spontaneous decision. They'd thought about it, discussed it, prepared for it. And their end goal was to get me to sign over power of attorney so they could sell my house and use the money for their own purposes. Diane read over my shoulder. She said one word, monsters. I couldn't disagree, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew exactly what they were after now, and I knew exactly what I was going to do about it. I looked at Diane and said I needed to make a phone call. She asked who I was calling. I told her, a realtor. Her eyes went wide. You're not serious. I smiled for the first time in days. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. I called Janet Morrison, a realtor I'd met at a community center event last year. We'd exchanged cards, stayed in touch. She'd mentioned more than once that if I ever wanted to sell, she'd love to help me. I never thought I'd take her up on it. Janet answered on the second ring. I told her I was ready to list my house. I wanted it on the market immediately. She was surprised, but excited. She said she could come over that afternoon to discuss details and do a walkthrough. Diane asked if I was really going through with this. I said absolutely. Derek and Heather wanted my house sold, fine. I'd sell it, but on my terms, not theirs, and they wouldn't see a penny of it. Diane asked where I would go. I said I had no idea yet, but I'd figure it out. First things first. The house needed to be listed before Derek and Heather came back from Europe. Janet arrived at 4 o'clock. She's in her mid-40s, energetic professional. She walked through my house, making notes, taking photos, asking questions. She said the house would sell fast in this market, probably within 2 weeks, maybe less. I told her I wanted it listed immediately. She asked about my timeline. I said I needed to close within 3 weeks. She raised her eyebrows, but said it was doable if we found the right buyer. We signed the listing agreement that evening. Janet said she'd have the house on the market by Wednesday morning. Professional photos would be taken Tuesday. I needed to declutter and stage a bit. Diane offered to help. We spent all day Tuesday, cleaning, organizing, boxing up personal items. The photographer came at 2 and spent 3 hours getting shots. By Wednesday morning, my house was online for $649,000. I felt liberated, terrified, but liberated. This was my house, my decision, my life. Derek had tried to take that control from me, and instead, I was taking it back in the most permanent way possible. Over the next week, Janet scheduled 17 showings. The market was as hot as she'd promised. We had 4 offers by Saturday. I accepted the highest $657,000 cash offer, 30-day close. The buyers were relocating from California for work and needed a quick move in. I called my lawyer, Thomas Brennan, someone Frank and I had used for our estate planning. I told him what Derek had done and what I was doing in response. He was shocked, but supportive. He reviewed the sale contract, confirmed everything was legally sound, and helped me set up plans for what I'd do with the money. We created a new trust. The funds from the house sale would go into it. I'd live off a portion, invest the rest. And Derek, his inheritance would be exactly $1. The rest would go to charities after I passed. Thomas said it was airtight. The days blurred together. Inspections, appraisals, paperwork. I was busy every moment, which was good. It kept me from thinking too much about what I was doing, from second-guessing myself. Diane checked on me daily. She'd become more than a neighbor. She was my support system through all of this. 2.5 weeks after Derek locked me in that basement, I closed on my house. I signed the papers at Thomas's office. The money was wired to my account, then immediately transferred to the trust. I was no longer a homeowner. For the first time since 1989, I didn't have a house. And it felt strange and wonderful and terrifying all at once. I'd already rented a small 2-bedroom condo in a 55-plus community in Gig Harbor, about 20 minutes from Tacoma. It was temporary, while I figured out my next move. Diane helped me move my belongings, the things I'd kept, the things that mattered. Photos, Frank's tools, my books, my clothes. Everything else had been sold with the house or donated. The new owners wanted most of the furniture, which was fine by me. I didn't need reminders. Derek and Heather were due back in 3 days. I'd kept my new address and phone number private. I'd closed my social media accounts. I wanted them to discover what I'd done on their own, without warning, just like they'd given me no warning when they locked me away. Fair was fair. I was unpacking boxes in my new condo when Diane called. She was laughing and breathless. She said Derek and Heather had just pulled up to my old house. Well, their old house now. Someone else's house. She was watching from her window. I told her to keep me updated. She said she wouldn't miss this for the world. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again and again. I listened to the voicemail. It was Derek, his voice frantic and confused. "Mom, where are you? Why are there people in the house? What's going on? Call me back, please." There was panic in his voice. Good. He called 6 more times. I didn't answer. Then Heather called from her phone. I didn't answer that either. Her voicemail was less panicked, more angry. "Mrs. Palmer, we need to talk to you immediately." Whatever you think you're doing, you need to stop. This is Derek's inheritance. You can't just take that away. Call us now. Inheritance. That word. Like I was already dead. Like my house, my security, my life's work with Frank was just something waiting for them to claim. The entitlement was staggering. I texted Derek one message: "I'm safe. Don't contact me again." Then, I blocked both their numbers. Diane called back an hour later. She said Derek had knocked on her door, asking if she knew where I was. She'd played dumb, said she hadn't seen me in weeks. She asked what happened. Derek apparently told her that I'd sold the house without telling him that I was supposed to discuss major decisions with him, that this was his childhood home. Diane said she'd told him it was my house, to do with as I pleased, and shut the door on him. Over the next few days, I got messages through other channels. Derek's Aunt Frank's sister, Patricia, called me. She'd heard from Derek that I'd sold the house and moved without warning. She wanted to know if I was okay, if something was wrong. I told her I was fine, better than fine, and that Derek had left out some important details about why I'd sold. She pressed for more information. I said if Derek wanted her to know, he could tell her himself. She seemed skeptical, but didn't push further. 2 weeks after their return, I received a letter. It was delivered to my lawyer's office, the only address they could find for me. Thomas called to let me know before forwarding it. The letter was from Derek. It was typed formal. It said he and Heather wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding. They acknowledged that locking me in the basement was an overreaction, but they'd been desperate. They were in severe debt, facing possible foreclosure on their apartment, though they didn't say how that was possible since they rented. They needed money fast, and they thought if they could just talk to me reasonably, without emotions, I'd understand and help them. The letter said they'd plan to come back from the trip, let me out, and have a calm conversation about selling the house and splitting the proceeds. They'd help me find a nice retirement community. They'd visit often. It would be better for everyone. The letter ended with a plea. Could we meet and discuss this, like adults? Could I reconsider and help them? They were family, after all. I read the letter 3 times. Then I wrote my response. It was short. I acknowledged their financial troubles. I did not acknowledge their apology because it wasn't real. They weren't sorry for what they'd done. They were sorry it hadn't worked. I told them that the house was sold, the money was in a trust, and they would not benefit from it now or after my death. I told them that locking me in a basement wasn't a misunderstanding. It was abuse. It was criminal. And the only reason I hadn't pressed charges was because I wanted to move on with my life, not drag them through court. I ended the letter with this: "You wanted me out of the way so you could take what was mine. Instead, you've pushed me toward a life I should have chosen years ago. A life where I matter, where my decisions are my own, where I'm not just a bank account or an obstacle. I hope someday you understand the difference between family and ownership. Until then, don't contact me again." Thomas mailed the letter on my behalf. I never heard back, but I did hear through Patricia that Derek and Heather were looking into legal options, trying to see if they could contest the sale or the trust. Thomas assured me they had no case. I'd sold my own property. I was of sound mind. I'd broken no laws. They, on the other hand, had committed false imprisonment. If they pushed, we'd push back harder. Months passed. I settled into my new life in Gig Harbor. The condo was small, but comfortable. I made friends in the community. I started volunteering at a local animal shelter. I took painting classes. I did things I'd always wanted to do, but never had time for. The money from the house sale was invested wisely. I'd have enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life, travel, if I wanted, enjoy my retirement without worry. It's been 8 months now since I sold the house. 8 months since I escaped that basement. 8 months since I cut my son out of my life. People ask if I regret it. The answer is complicated. Do I regret that my relationship with Derek ended this way? Of course. I'm his mother. I'll always love him. But do I regret standing up for myself, protecting myself, choosing my own well-being over his manipulation? Not for 1 second. I've learned things about myself in these months. I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. For years after Frank died, I felt diminished, like half of me was gone. I leaned on Derek emotionally, maybe too much. I made him the center of my world because I didn't know what else to do with the grief. And in doing that, I taught him that I'd always be there, always give in, always put him first. I created the monster that locked me in a basement. That's a hard truth to face, but it's the truth nonetheless. Frank used to say that the best thing we could teach Derek was self-sufficiency. He'd get frustrated when I'd rush to solve Derek's problems, bail him out of jams. He'd say I was teaching Derek that Mom would always fix things. I'd argue that I was just being a good mother. But Frank was right. I wasn't helping Derek grow up. I was stunting him. After Frank died, it got worse. My guilt over losing his father made me even more lenient. Derek wanted money for a car upgrade. I gave it. He needed help with rent. 1 month, I covered it. He and Heather wanted expensive wedding gifts. I bought them. I never said no. I never set boundaries. And when Derek realized he could take, and I'd never stop giving, the logical next step in his mind was to take everything. The house, my security, my autonomy. But here's what he didn't count on. He didn't count on me finding my spine. He didn't count on me realizing that love doesn't mean endless sacrifice. He didn't count on me understanding that being a good mother sometimes means saying no, setting limits, letting your child face consequences. He locked me in a basement, thinking I was weak, thinking I'd be so desperate for his love, when he returned, that I'd do whatever he wanted. He was wrong. I won't pretend the first few months were easy. I cried a lot. I second-guessed myself constantly. I wondered if I'd overreacted, if selling the house was too extreme. But every time I doubted, I'd remember those 2 days locked in that bathroom. I'd remember the fear, the betrayal, the realization that my own child saw me as nothing more than an obstacle to his financial gain. And then I'd know I'd done the right thing. Diane has been incredible through all of this. She checks on me weekly. We have coffee, go to movies, take walks along the harbor. She's told me more than once that she admires what I did, that she wishes she'd had the courage to stand up to her own children when they'd tried to manipulate her finances after her husband died. She said watching me take control of my life inspired her to do the same. We've become true friends, the kind of friendship I didn't realize I was missing. I've also reconnected with old nursing colleagues, women I'd lost touch with after retirement. We meet once a month for lunch, share stories, laugh. They've embraced me back into their circle. One of them, Karen, told me she'd gone through something similar with her daughter. Not as extreme, but the same basic pattern of entitlement and manipulation. She said it took her years to break free. She said I was brave for doing it quickly. I don't know if it was bravery. It felt more like survival. As for Derek and Heather, I've heard bits and pieces through Patricia. They're struggling financially. Heather's parents apparently bailed them out of their immediate debts. But there's tension there now. Derek lost his job 3 months ago. Something about downsizing at his company. He's been job hunting without much luck. Heather is pregnant. They're expecting a baby in 4 months. Patricia told me this, thinking it might soften me, might make me reach out. It didn't. I feel sad for the baby, my grandchild, who I may never meet. But I also know that reaching out now would send the wrong message. It would tell Derek and Heather that all they have to do is wait me out, present me with a grandchild, and I'll fold. I can't do that. Not to them, and not to myself. If Derek wants a relationship with me, he needs to earn it. He needs to acknowledge what he did, truly apologize, and demonstrate, through actions, not just words, that he's changed. Until then, the door stays closed. I've started seeing a therapist, Dr. Helen Ramsey. She's in her 60s, specializes in family dynamics and elder issues. She's helped me process everything, helped me see the patterns I'd fallen into, helped me forgive myself for the mistakes I made in raising Derek. She's also helped me understand that what Derek did wasn't my fault. Yes, I enabled him, but he made the choice to lock me in that basement. He's responsible for his actions, just like I'm responsible for mine. Dr. Ramsey asked me once what I'd say to Derek if I could say anything without consequences. I thought about it for a long time. Finally, I said I'd tell him that I'm sorry I didn't teach him better. I'm sorry I didn't show him that people, even mothers, have limits. I'm sorry I let him think that love means always saying yes. But I'd also tell him that I'm not sorry for saving myself. I'm not sorry for choosing my own life over his greed. And I'm not sorry for hoping that someday he'll understand why I had to do what I did. The truth is, I don't know if Derek will ever understand. He might spend the rest of his life thinking I'm the villain in this story, the selfish mother who abandoned her son when he needed her most. And I've made peace with that, because I know the real story. I know that I spent 34 years giving everything to my child, and when he repaid me by locking me in a basement, I finally gave myself something instead: freedom, dignity, a future on my own terms. I still have hard days when I miss him so much it physically hurts, days when I wonder what Derek was like as a little boy, sweet and loving and excited about everything, days when I wish I could go back and do things differently. But I also have good days when I wake up in my little condo and feel genuinely happy, days when I realize I'm building a life that's mine, not defined by anyone else's expectations or demands, days when I'm proud of the woman I've become. So here I am, 59 years old, living in a 2-bedroom condo in Gig Harbor, no longer a homeowner in the traditional sense, but somehow more secure than I've ever been. I've got money in the bank, friends who care about me, and a future that's wide open. I paint on Tuesdays. I volunteer at the shelter on Thursdays. I take weekend trips with Diane to places I've never been. Last month, we drove to Portland and explored the Japanese gardens. Next month, we're planning a trip to the Oregon coast. I think about Frank sometimes and wonder what he'd think of all this. I think he'd be proud of me. He always wanted me to be stronger, to stand up for myself. I think he'd be disappointed in Derek, but not surprised. Frank saw the warning signs, tried to address them. I wish I'd listened better. But I also think Frank would understand why I had to do what I did. He'd have done the same thing if our positions were reversed. He loved Derek, but he loved me too. And he'd want me to be safe and happy above all else. I've been thinking about dating. That feels strange to even say. I haven't been on a date since 1984, but Dr. Ramsey encouraged me to consider it. Said, "There's no reason I should spend the rest of my life alone if I don't want to." There's a man in my condo community. His name is Robert. He's 62, a widower like me. We've had coffee a few times. He's kind, funny, easy to talk to. Nothing serious, but it's nice to have male companionship again. It makes me feel like a whole person, not just a mother or an ex-homeowner, or a victim. Just Margaret. Just me. I've also been thinking about travel. Real travel, not just weekend trips. Karen from my nursing group is planning a 2-week trip to Ireland next spring. She's invited me to join her. I've always wanted to see Ireland. Frank and I talked about it, but never went. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's time for a lot of things I've been putting off. The lawyer Thomas called me last week. He said Derek made one final attempt to contest the trust. He tried to argue that I was coerced into selling the house, that I was mentally unstable after being locked in the basement. It was a desperate play. Thomas shut it down immediately. He provided documentation of my mental competency statements from Diane and others, the timeline showing I'd made calm, rational decisions. The judge dismissed Derek's petition within an hour. Thomas said it's over. Derek has no more legal avenues. The money is mine protected and will stay that way. I felt relieved when I heard that. Not happy exactly, but relieved. It meant Derek was finally accepting reality. He couldn't manipulate me anymore. He couldn't control me. Whatever happened next would be on him, his life, his choices, his consequences, and I could finally, fully move forward without looking over my shoulder. Last week, I did something I'd been avoiding. I drove past my old house. I don't know why I did it. Curiosity, maybe. Closure. The new owners have made changes. They painted the exterior a soft gray instead of the cream color it was before. They've added flower boxes under the windows. The yard looks different, more manicured. It's beautiful, but it's not mine anymore. And as I sat there looking at it, I realized I didn't feel sad. I felt grateful. Grateful that house gave Frank and me a good life. Grateful it provided security for so many years. And grateful that I was able to let it go when I needed to. I drove away and I didn't look back. Because that's not where my life is anymore. My life is in the little condo in Gig Harbor. My life is in the painting classes, in the animal shelter, in the coffee dates with Robert. My life is in the possibilities ahead of me, not the memories behind me. If there's one thing I want people to take away from my story, it's this. You are never too old to start over. You are never too old to stand up for yourself. You are never too old to say no to people who want to use you, even if those people are family. Especially if those people are family. Because family should lift you up, not lock you down. Family should respect you, not exploit you. And if your family can't do that, then you have every right to build a new life without them. Derek made his choice when he locked me in that basement. He chose money over me. He chose his wants over my well-being. And I made my choice when I called that realtor. I chose myself. I chose freedom. I chose a future where I matter. And I'd make that choice again every single day. So what would you do if you were in my shoes? If your own child betrayed you? Like that, would you have the strength to walk away? Would you choose yourself over the relationship? Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Someone who's struggling with family expectations or manipulation. Sometimes we all need permission to put ourselves first. Sometimes we all need to know it's okay to sell the house literally and figuratively and start fresh. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope wherever you are, whatever you're facing, you find the courage to choose yourself. You deserve it. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life. Until next time.